Vermin Supreme, welcome to Primo Nutmeg.
Well, Primo Nutmeg, welcome to Rockport, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Pigeon Cove.
thank you for meeting me here in the middle of the night at this dock here. It's a very interesting place. I've never done an interview in a location like this before, at a time of day like this before, so
Oh yeah,
appreciate you making the
looking
time.
for a quiet place, and this is a pretty quiet place. It's a nice place. It's a nice night.
So I'm really happy to have you on the show. I've been wanting to have you on the show for an interview for a while, but you've been in a very famous Primo Nutmeg clip before at the Trump inauguration.
Yes, the inaugural festivities, the deplorable.
Yep, outside the deplorable,
Yes.
there was a protest, and you were there, and it was a very raucous, excitable type situation, and
Absolutely.
the attendees, they were fighting with Antifa, and there was an instance where one of the Trump supporters got attacked by Antifa, or the Black Bloc, or whatever you want to call them, and you stepped in to save this guy because he was getting pummeled. I'm just wondering, if you remember that, and just why you felt the need to get involved there and protect him.
I do remember that very well, and I've sort of made my street career about de-escalation and diffusing and calming violent situations. Traditionally and most effectively, it's always been in situations where there are riot cops versus protesters primarily. That's where I do my best work. That's where I've developed a lot of my techniques. And some of these newfangled demonstration protest situations with the different sides mixing it up and scuffling it up. And it's a very different type of situation. It's a whole new world. I was watching some of that footage and stuff going out in Portland, and it's just it's interesting to wrap one's head around to try and figure out whose side are you on, or are you on a side, or what does it even mean anymore when various ruffianly disposed people or people want to mix it up go out to mix it up like that. So yes, that was my first demonstration with that particular dynamic. And of course, I've also been known for using my humor to diffuse situations by cracking wise on the cops, having fun with them at their expense, asking them to, surrender to me and come out with their hands up and their pants down.
Okay, conga line, gentlemen. Let's see a conga line. Please put your hands up. The officer in front of you. Thank you. Can you go?
I was laughing.
But there's also a lot of serious things that I like to read to the police. I do a lot of excerpts from crowd control manuals, from state police, from international forces, from military forces. And granted that, I edit them down to, be most effective in my situation and what I'm trying to get across.
Right.
But, there's pieces by the FBI that talk about, how the police are, in their riot gear, lined up in a skirmish line, have a very intimidating effect for about 2 minutes, and then their shields become missile magnets, and the crowd, will be invited to throw things at them.
Right.
And and it's funny to be able to read these things to, the police, and essentially I take this sort of professorial type of role where I'm, trying to train them up.
Right.
Let them know things. It's always best to let a crowd disperse on its own accord. And, I try and point out to the police oftentimes how they are being used as a passive provocation. And, them coming out, just dressed like that is an affront and offensive to people. And obviously elicits certain reaction. And it feeds upon itself and becomes this loop, if you will. And things can spiral out of control. There's that. I've certainly run interference, or in my rodeo clown act. I mean, if I'm at a big demonstration and I see, the red and the black flags down there, or all black flags, or what have you, I mean, I know that these are people who are acting in a fairly militant, aggressive fashion, and they will very well likely be fighting against authority and challenging the police and things like that. Maybe even symbolic property destruction and these type of things, and which I perceive as a non-violent act, certainly an illegal act, and certainly a provocative act, and possibly an escalation type of act.
Right.
But for me, it's not particularly violent unless somebody's on the other side or something of the window or what have you. But that's just me.
Well, it's interesting because I took part in Iraq War protests, and I remember like there'd be like a handful of counter demonstrators. But something interesting about the Trump inauguration, and that we've seen since, we've seen in Charlottesville and we've seen in Portland and I believe in Berkeley, is that you have two sides. You have these Trump supporters, these nationalists, or however they want to term themselves, and you have Antifa. And I wasn't around in the 60s, so I don't know if it was a similar dynamic then, but it really seems like there's almost like a muted sort of civil war happening now in our society, where you have these two cultural extremes really battling out.
What did change? Was it the Obama presidency? Is that what really fucking fired up all these people who were so opposed to a black man as the president? Did it become a racial thing? Did that create the backlash, and Trump just came in and seized it and whipped up the frenzy, and civil society be damned? And not sure how we got here, but we are definitely here.
Yes,
there seems to be a serious rise of right nationalism, and there seems to be a rise of militancy based against it. Like I say, I mean, I've run with the black bloc on the streets, not during real chaos situations or street fighting like that, but as a person who's trying to keep the peace or change the dynamics of certain situations, when I see a large group of people all masked up, something interesting could happen. And so I find it good to be there just in case.
I'm ready to take my oath of office. I'm ready to faithfully execute all Americans. I'm ready to deliver on my promises of time travel research, zombie preparedness, mandatory toothbrush laws, and yes, free ponies for every last damn American. It's gonna happen, people. It's gonna happen.
How long have you been involved in politics?
I've been running for something for over 30 years. I first ran for mayor of Baltimore in 1987, and that was not a particularly political act. It was more of a looking for something to do. It was more of a project just to give me some focus. And
But were you involved in politics before that? Like, were you like an anti-nuclear demonstrator?
Sure. Yeah, I dabbled in it. I would do a little bit of that, but I wouldn't consider myself an activist at that point. I think I became an activist when I started, when the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament. It was a anti-nuclear march that went from California, LA to DC back in 1986.
Okay.
And by the time it rolled into Baltimore, there was probably about 5,000 people. It would go 20 miles a day, and it had this amazing infrastructure. It had trailer trucks hauling the 2 crates of belonging that each marcher was allowed. It had trailer trucks hauling all these tents. Everybody had their own tent. There was porta potties. There was like 3 or 4 kitchen trailers, one vegetarian, several meat ones. They had school buses that were functioning as a school system. They had their own school system, different school buses for different grades. They had a mobile zip code. They had giant water trucks. They had their own porta potty pumping trucks. Whatever it was that you needed to move 5,000 people down the road was with this march at that point. Now, I was in Baltimore. I was pretty much done with Baltimore at that time, and when that Peace March rolled through, I saw that, and I became quite inspired, and I jumped on board and never looked back. Well, I looked back a little bit, but that's another part of the story. And so I was attending these national political events, which started to cultivate a national audience. I was starting to bring in the running for office thing into these demonstrations. I started doing peacekeeping, which was an important part of, keeping a lot of these activities safe and helping facilitate people's First Amendment right to peacefully assemble. Because, of course, once things aren't peaceable, well, the First Amendment doesn't apply anymore. It's a whole different matter. I think that's something to very much keep in mind in the current day and current situation. I mean, if we are exercising our First Amendment right of peaceable assembly to petition the government for a redress of our grievances, it's clearly must be peaceful. I mean, you must know that's another thing I hammer home to the riot cops. I mean, the difference between a mob and a crowd, and different types of mobs and different types of crowds, and how they're all perfectly legal until they cross a line and become something else. And of course, many times the police declare a perfectly peaceable First Amendment assembly illegal. They declare it not to be a legal assembly, which is some crazy bullshit in of its own right, but I've seen it happen time and time again.
When did you become Vermin Supreme?
Right around 1985.
So before you ran for office?
Yes, a little bit before. It was the punk rock days. A lot of people still had sort of punk rock names, and a lot of Baltimore art weirdo scene I was involved in. And a lot of people were taking on different personas and characters, and on the stage and on the streets, and just merging them with their real life. And I became Vermin Supreme, and started doing bookings and promoting at a couple of nightclubs in Baltimore. Vermin Supreme's Fabulous Galaxy Lounge and the Marble Bar, and just booking all this local original bands, and getting to know a lot of people. And that's sort of what led me to running for mayor, because I was working the door, I was working the stage, I was just meeting the people, doing all the promotions for all the shows, and so there was a lot of glad handing, a lot of greeting, a lot of meeting, and we just had a lot of fun. It was certainly one of the funner things I did in my life. And it did lead to that natural idea, like, well, maybe I should run for mayor. And then it was just a short leap, because originally it was all club owners, all booking agents were vermin, and I was going to be the Vermin Supreme. And so it's just a short hop over to politics, where all politicians are vermin, and I am the Vermin Supreme.
Makes sense. Well,
I wanted to, because I had mentioned the Rainbow Gatherings.
Yeah.
So I was attending these national political demonstrations, which started to get me a little politically known nationally, and then I was attending the Rainbow Gatherings. Now, you know the Rainbow Gatherings?
No, does that have to do with the Rainbow Coalition?
Not at all. It's the Rainbow family of living, love, and light. They are essentially, demographically, perhaps considered a hippie gathering. They've been going on since 1972. We'll be hitting our 50th anniversary real soon. Essentially, what they are temporary autonomous zones, to use the 90s anarchist term, and they are camp out in the woods of approximately 10 to 20,000 people. They occur every year. They occur in a national forest every year around the country at any given. And once again, we are using the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution as our right to freely assemble on the public lands. And so it was at the Rainbow Gathering that I also really learned a lot of dealing with cop skill, and how to deal with them with no fear, and then I was able to transfer and bring these skills out into the streets, out into riot world. Another thing, I'll talk to the police and tell the line cops and the riot cops, that they are being used in a lot of ways, and they are being used as a passive provocation, and they are being put in a position to have people throw shit at them just so that they can be ordered to attack those same people. I'm trying to deconstruct and demystify what is going on in real time. I will encourage mutiny. I will try and get the officers to question why their commanding officers are putting them in these situations. A lot of times these days, because of the profile of the boot and all that stuff, I can ask to see the commanding officer, and a lot of times they think I'm in charge, and they'll send me their CO. The CO
Really?
will come out and talk to me, and I will just ask them, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve here? And if he has something that they're trying to do that makes sense to me, maybe I will pass that information on with the disclaimer that it's coming from the cops. But at least we're letting people know what is going on. And when I read from the U.S. Constitution or when I read from these riot control manuals, not only is it informing the police of the conduct of which I expect them. I mean, I expect my oppressors to abide by a certain rule of conduct. Otherwise, right. I won't allow them to oppress me so much. But it also bucks up the crowd. It lets the crowd know that these are sensible things. I mean, things are all fucked up. But
one really cool thing that I saw when you were talking about trying to spur mutiny or get solidarity or whatever. Something interesting that I saw was a clip from France, and there's been a lot of footage of the police, horribly repressing the yellow vest protesters.
The yellow vests continue.
But I did see one clip early on where there was a line of police, and they were they all took off their helmets all at once, which is kind of a sign of solidarity with the protesters, at least seemingly so.
Yes.
So I mean that's really cool, and it would be cool if at some point you could get the police to do an about face and see that we're all in the same class, and we're struggling against
even if they're class traitors.
But I mean, have you ever had any kind of success with that to any degree? Have you ever got the police to stop doing something? Or
well, I will ask the cops to pull their punches. I mean, nobody's gonna know.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna, it's hard to tell if they're hitting full strength or partial strength or half-heartedly. But I ask the cops from my heart, like, listen, you will be asked, you may be asked to attack the protesters, but that doesn't mean you have to really go out to hurt them. So, I don't know. I would say that my techniques have decreased the risk of violence. Yes, I say people feel safer when I'm out there doing that. Can I quantify it? It's a little harder to say. I mean, it's a psyops operation, essentially,
So one thing I have to ask you about is the boot, because that's the one thing that, if somebody knows nothing else about you, they know you as the guy with the boot on his head. When did you start wearing the boot?
I've been wearing the boot since about 91.
Okay, 91. And what inspired that?
I was at a rainbow gathering. It was rainy. I had a pair of galoshes. I put one on my foot, and then for some reason I put the other one on my head. And my foot got wet, but my head stayed dry, and people really seemed to like it. And so it became a thing. And I wore it on my Mayor of the Eastern Seaboard tour, which was 10 cities, hitchhiking through with the boot on my head. And that was very interesting. I was talking to a lot of cops on my own with the boot on my head. I mean, at rainbow gatherings and the protests, I know people are watching my back.
Well, it definitely makes you stand out more than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, the boot, I mean, it's a signifier. It signifies, if I start walking towards a crowd or a person, they will know immediately that what is going to be presented to them may not be linear.
Okay.
It sets that off. I have the canned response. What people on the street or a reporter, what does the boot stand? It stands for all that is good in America. The ability to wear a boot on your head if you damn want to. Sometimes I'll tell the media, the boot is a pile of shit and you are the flies that are buzzing around it. But the thing that I like the best about it is you take a picture of me in any crowd, any situation, anytime, show that picture to kids and say, hey kids, what's wrong with this picture? Boom. It's the guy with the boot on his head.
Right.
So it's a simple, elegant, and effective device which has allowed me to amplify my First Amendment free speech voice millions of times. I mean, obviously, I would not be nearly as an interesting character if I did not have a boot on my head. If I was just a regular guy wearing a regular suit, ranting and raving on the street about ponies and zombies, it would be easy to dismiss me. But this boot, and of course, when I was a young hippie, it was very easy to dismiss me too. Fucking hippie kid. But now I'm a grizzled old dude. I have gravitas. It's really hard to deny the power of this ugly mug here.
How many boots have you had over the years?
Probably doesn't. Probably doesn't. I'm about due for another one.
Has it ever caused you any trouble? Like, have you ever, I don't know.
Well, conceptually, it's a magic boot, and it's weird like that, because just by wearing the boot, people, authority figures, think that they're being confronted. They're being, I'm a rebel or something. That man has a boot on his head. That will not do. That violates all decorum. No. And so a lot of times early on, I would find a lot of my time trying to go into these political events in New Hampshire, arguing about the boot. Yeah. Arguing, it's a hat, it's a boot. Why can't I wear the boot? What, and trying to make them explain why I can't wear a boot if I want to.
Right. It's funny that sometimes there are just rules in society that aren't written down. They're not laws, but like you're not allowed to do it. Like I had a friend who he didn't mow his lawn, and there's no law against that, but the town ended up like going after him because they said that he was breeding vermin or something
along those lines. They'll make a law. They'll make a law.
Right, exactly.
They have to.
End up suing him for like over $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's funny, and I imagine you must run into that a lot with the boot, like when you're trying to participate in debates and stuff. Yeah.
In fact, South Carolina, their Libertarian State Party is holding a debate, and they seem to have specifically crafted one of their rules against prop hats or clothing.
That's very libertarian.
Yes, and so yeah, there is that. It's challenging. It's confusing. It's discording. It causes cognitive dissonance. All of these things. I mean, I like it. It's absurd. I'm an absurdist. Whatever we can do to cause confusion and sow mental chaos, to make people question why not, why not ponies? We can afford these wars, we can afford this, that, the other thing, why can't every American have a pony? And you break it down, you do the math. Yeah, oh yeah. The government could afford to give you a pony. Don't let them tell you they couldn't, because they could.
So at the end of the day, is that really what you're trying to do with these different campaigns, is show how absurd our system is by just being more outlandish? Or being outlandish in different ways?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I mean, granted, it's easy. It's pissing on fish in a barrel. I mean, it's a easy enough thing to do, but I seem to have found a way, to bring this character into the real world, and the interactions. Because. Okay, here's Vermin Supreme's imaginary zombie pony mandatory toothbrushing interstate roller coaster world. Over here is reality. But they overlap. There's this Venn diagram overlap, because it's me, because I exist in the flesh. It's not just internet. It's just not all memes. I go to New Hampshire. My name is legally Vermin Supreme. I raise money. I get on a ballot, up in New Hampshire. In real world, people can really vote for me if they want to. I have come in third in the New Hampshire primary on the Democratic ticket. I've come in fourth in the New Hampshire primary. It exists. I am currently seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. This is my first real campaign. Every other prior campaign has been for the lulz. It's been sort of imaginary. It's just like, I'm running for the Democratic nomination. I'm running for the Republican nomination. But this time I'm actually seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. The Libertarian Party is the only party that is cool enough to have opened its arms to me. They have welcomed me in there. They have a fairly good understanding of what I'm doing and an appreciation for it. And it's just this natural extension. I mean, I've been running for president for 30 years, but this time it's for real. I hope to be the National Libertarian Party nominee. Now, there are arguments. There's arguments that why I would be a great candidate for the LP. I mean, 5% is the gold standard for a Libertarian Party candidate. That would ensure national ballot access.
Right. I don't think Gary Johnson got that last time, did he?
No, he got 3%.
Right.
Not too bad. Which is good for in some places that got the ballot access, but not everywhere. But there are arguments to be made. The bubble that I'm surrounding myself with are believe, and once again, I'm merely positing, I'm trying to put out there that it's not inconceivable, that we could parlay, this character, this mythology, and make it go super hyper viral. I get a shit ton of press and media interest over the election year. Libertarian Party generally does, somewhat. The candidate for the Libertarian Party does. But if you check out Rap News, out of Australia from the 2016 campaign, they had all these characters portraying different presidential candidates. There was Hillary, there was Trump, there was Gary Johnson, there was Jill Stein, and then they brought me on. If you do a real polling, generally people will say, name a third-party candidate. A lot of people will come up with my name. I have a pretty massive social media presence, and my demographic is the kids. Like I say, there's 3.9 million kids graduate from high school every year. Give me two of those years, 2019, 2020. That's about 8 million potential voters right there. Add that to 17 million college students. That's a pool of 25 million voters. And if I can get 1 out of every 4 of those kids to vote for me, then I've got the 5%. Now you start adding in the 40 million voters who did not vote in the last presidential election. And you got to keep in mind that my base, my fan base, my supporter base, it almost all is covered by this umbrella of nerd culture, geek culture. Podcasters, furries, bronies, kinky sexters, roller derby girls, Comic-Con, anime play, if you name a subculture, magic card play, just all of them. It sort of comes, political nerds, political geeks. And these are people who I believe are my natural voting bloc. People who could be persuaded to vote for me. And if we were to make it easy enough for them, if I am on a national ballot, if I am on all 50 state ballots as Vermin Supreme, the Libertarian candidate, and people go to the polls and they don't want to vote for Trump and they can't stand the Democratic candidate, I think I could get 5%. I think in the last election I could have done it. We'll see how this one goes.
Are you getting more support every time? Like, are you finding yourself getting more popular with every election that you're in?
Since 2012, it totally blew up in 2012. During that glitter bombing at Ansem's, when I hit Randall Terry, and that went viral, and then I got turned into a meme, and appeared in pretty much every media source that existed at the time. Yes, definitely. And 2016 pretty much picked up where that left off, and 2020 seems like it's going to be pretty kick-ass also, but yeah, I got a campaign staff and they are working very, very hard, and
I can definitely see why there's appeal, and I can definitely see why a lot of people just want to blow up the system and vote for an outlandish character.
And they did that the last go around.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of the people who did that exactly might not be pleased with the results.
Yep.
And so they're another natural voting base. A lot of the Bernie bros, when Bernie didn't get it, just sort of naturally went over to Trump. People want something new. And,
there's pushback against that narrative, but there's actually, if you look at the places where Bernie Sanders won, I noticed it first in Connecticut, because there's large portions of Connecticut where Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton, and those are the parts of the state that switched over from Obama to Trump. And you saw the same thing in Michigan and in Wisconsin. The counties where Bernie Sanders had defeated Hillary Clinton, those are also the ones that switched from being Democratic traditionally to voting for Donald Trump. So there's definitely a lot of people out there who are frustrated with the system.
And anything could happen. America's sword is split down the middle and could go either way. It's always like that.
The thing about the Libertarian Party, if you look at the last few elections, the Libertarian Party nominated Bob Barr in 2008 when there was other choices, and then they went with Gary Johnson, nominated him, and now this year, if you're running for the Libertarian nomination, John McAfee, who's on the run from the law on some boat in the Atlantic, he's also running for the nomination, Adam Kokesh is running for the nomination. His on a platform of abolishing the federal
Yes,
government,
which was one of my early campaign planks back in the day. But yes.
So if you have kind of all of you folks, taking the extreme sort of, position on all these things, or being more outlandish, it seems as though the Libertarian Party has really been fighting against that, and Nick Sarwark has really been pushing against that and trying to go more mainstream. And I also think that Justin Amash is actually a possible candidate this year. He just left the Republican Party.
Anything could happen. It's still early in the race.
But if you have, again, if it's Kokesh, McAfee, you against Justin Amash, isn't the party infrastructure and wouldn't the majority of delegates be going for the more mainstream candidate?
Well, it's the way that thing runs. It's sort of like Gary Johnson. It's fairly, I think. It's understood that he, bought his way into that, brought a lot of delegates, and that's part of it. Can you mobilize the delegates?
Not only did he win, he also convinced them to make
Bill Weld
the vice presidential nominee.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So, I mean, essentially, I'm just making an offer. I'm making an offer to the Libertarian Party. I'm saying, this is what I bring to the table. If you would like to go this route, if you're interested in doing this type of thing, trolling America on a much larger scale, the politics of respectability has not necessarily done us any favors or worked in our favor, and bringing up another washed up or former Republican, there's a good chunk of the party that is sort of sick of that part of it too. So yeah, I mean, there is real opposition to my candidacy, and I understand that. I think a lot has to do with the framing. Can a serious party put up a joke candidate and not be perceived as a joke party? I think that it totally could.
That really seems like what the the party establishment is trying to do. They're trying to not be a joke party, and that's why they keep running former Republicans who have been elected in the past. I mean, that's just my interpretation, but it seems like you're putting yourself up to a lot of backlash within the Libertarian Party to try to silence you and to keep you from winning the nomination.
That could happen, but that's part of politics. I mean, like I say, it's my first real campaign with real strategy, with real stakes, with real backlash and real opposition. And it's very interesting. But I've been attending, numerous state libertarian parties, and I think a lot of the backlash is for people who have a misunderstanding of who I am and what I do. I think a lot of people just see the meme, they see that video, and they just don't know that I, and that's why I've been going to these places. My campaign staff tells me that if you're a serious libertarian nominee, you must attend these state conventions. So I have been doing that. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing that to show the people that I do not always have a boot on my head. That's a revelation to some people, that it's not attached to my skull, that I'm not my character, that my character is a separate entity or a separate portion of me, that I'm not always on, that I'm not always disruptive. And
but isn't that the point of the campaign, to be disruptive?
Well, yes, it is. There is that too, but it's a calculated disruption. It's not disruption for the sake of disruption. I mean, at times it could be, yeah, sure. I have a lot of fun on the streets, and there's a lot of spontaneity, and it's a lot of improv, and being an outrageous character, that's one of the beautiful things about it, is that I have few constraints. I can do sort of things that I would like to do or want to spontaneously just do without thinking about the consequences. And yeah, I guess if I'm accepted as the nominee, that is part of the campaign that they will get, the part that anything could happen. And I guess it goes under the idea that any press is good press, and any attention coming our way is going to be good for my voting demographic, for the younger viewers, for the younger voters, for the people we're trying to reach out to. It's calculation. I mean, will it work? Will it not work? Will it be accepted? Will it not? We don't know. My campaign staff has a level of confidence that we will be able to pull it off, that we will be able to stack up enough delegates to make it happen. I believe that we already have enough to get me on the debate stage. Personally, I'll be happy if I get on the debate stage, and we'll make that go viral. I'll rock that and draw a lot of eyeballs.
Well, you're definitely, I think you're appealing from a media standpoint too. I think that you're the kind of person that, that they'd want to put you on TV because they know it would be ratings.
Absolutely.
But again, I just think that there are libertarians out there who want to be taken seriously. And then additionally, there's also a faction within the Libertarian Party who is very ideological and wants to, get the word of the non-aggression principle out there.
Absolutely.
And just, free market economics and things about monetary policy and whatnot. So,
well,
why would you be a good candidate for them?
As part of my candidacy, I have made the pledge that I will incorporate or front the Libertarian Party platform. I do believe and I do accept the fact that if you are representing, if you're going to front a national party, then you must represent that party, and that includes getting their ideals and ideas out there, and that certainly includes the Libertarian Party platform. Mm-hmm. I like the platform. It agrees with me, and I'm willing to present it, and I believe that I can present it in a unique fashion, if you will, by vermining it up a little bit.
How do you have a half satirical message and then also stand up for these principles?
Well, I think if you check out any of the, I've done several debates at the Libertarian State Conventions, one in Ohio, one in Michigan, and one where maybe somewhere else. And essentially, I've got, at this point, I sort of split the answer between amusing anecdote, humorous answer, and then take it back to the platform. So if somebody asked me a question, I would. I think it would be a little of that. I think it would be starting with a joke and then bringing it down to something a little more serious, because people like the jokes, people like me making fun of things, but I think people also like when I talk seriously about things also.
It seems like a major focus of politics, and especially of third-party politics, is these economic labels, though.
There's a lot of semantics involved. I have heard tell that when libertarians that I know I've mentioned when a left-leaning person is talking that they are against capitalism, that perhaps what they really are against is the corporatocracy.
Right.
Maybe they don't mind a smaller scale or level of capitalistic exchange for goods and services. When one of the things that always stuck in my craw was when libertarians would speak about charity as the only thing that was going to pick up the slack, and I believe in mutual aid, and just trying to bring forth the idea of mutual aid into the libertarian circles, and how that is better than charity or just like that.
So at the end of the day, is that really what you're trying to do? Is just kind of advocate for peace and get people to cooperate more?
Sure, that's my vision of anarchy: is voluntary cooperation, people working together to do what needs to be done and get done whatever they want to get done. How does it scale up, or better yet, still, how do we decentralize the current system to a point where it's decentralized to the point where it is all these little clusters of people, beehives of activities of people making things happen and helping each other, and ponies and unicorns and stuff. Mm-hmm. Sure.
But again, I keep coming back to this natural antagonism, because I think of, a hardcore leftist is going to say, Vermin, I'm on board for all of that, but in order to do that, you have to get rid of capitalism, you have to get rid of the employer-employee relationship, you have to get rid of people owning the means of production and owning land. All of those things need to be abolished, and the libertarian capitalist is going to be against all of those things. So,
yes,
where do you fall on that?
Well,
or how would you respond to that?
Brother, that is why I am the world's foremost expert on ponynomics. I've been totally trying to short circuit that whole argument and avoid that whole argument by putting forth a whole new pony-based economy. I mean, because we don't need any of those things if we have a pony-based economy. If the whole economy is based on people's love and care and ownership for ponies, and we're just going to be thinking about our ponies. And then you're going to have to worry about who the boss is. You're the boss. Your pony is the boss.
Makes sense.
And then the secret dental police will step in if you have a dispute. And, you know, you got to just make sure that you can make it through all the secret dental police checkpoints all in one piece.
I do get what you're saying, but again, I think another challenge that you have to face is just if you were to get, you know, on stage in front of a lot of people to get exposure through the media, you know, so many people don't even pay attention to politics, and so many people are just, you know, busy with their stupid 9-to-5 job and worried about paying their bills that
Amen.
they're not gonna get it. They're just gonna say, what the hell is this guy talking about? So how have you encountered that? Have you
Well, I've
unveiled your satire to people and had them just
sure,
not understand what the hell is going on?
I'm very aware that it operates and is perceived on a lot of different levels. Absolutely. I mean, they people get what out of it they get what out of it they can get out of it. A lot of people take it at face value. I've always thought that if they take it at face value and think that you know, that's actually a real character there, I think that's funny. I think it's a much funnier experience all around.
That's true.
I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, it's just hilarious that a person can think that that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I've always thought that was the most funny reaction to it. And you know, I was on the Fox News Waters World recently, a couple months back, and that was a very interesting experience, and seeing how that was interpreted by the various factions of the media. You know, it was like because if you did not know who I was, if you had not experienced me before, and you were a casual Fox viewer and saw that segment, yes, you would have had no other way to understand it other than it was part of a skit that Jesse Waters had put together, a very bizarre, weird skit with no payoff, and I sort of liked that. I liked that idea. It's like, well, that was weird. Why did they even do that? And, because the context, there just wasn't enough context given to even really know what was going on. You know, and I'm there like messing with the whole idea of being on TV, sort of spinning around in my chair. You know, it's just like, you know, you've never seen that on TV. Nobody does that on TV. Why do they even have spinning chairs on set? I ask you. But yeah, so that was fun. You know, I went in there. I decided, you know, I'm going to go into the show toe to toe, own the show. You know, I knew his shtick. I knew his bit. I knew he was going to sit there and try and, you know, try and get me to say stupid things, and I short-circuited that by coming in there and being stupid right off the get-go, and then, you know, opening up with the Biden jokes, just boom, boom, and, you know, when I said, oh, you'll never guess who they have worked in the TSA, Joe Biden, I went like that, but they didn't show that part.
Well, Vermin Supreme, I really do appreciate you joining me for this edition of Primo Nutmeg. For folks out there who would like to get involved with your campaign and follow you, how can they do that?
Oh, well, be sure to check out the website, verminsupreme2020.com. That's the official campaign website, and there's buttons and ways to join and share the campaign. Of course, you can follow Vermin Supreme for President, the Blue Check on Facebook page, Twitter at Vermin Supreme. There's an Instagram, Vermin Supreme for President, with a blue check mark, I think. Oh, yeah, buy my merch. Remember, kids, fascism is on the rise in America. Why not choose the friendliest fascist of them all? I'm Vermin Supreme, the friendly fascist attire you can trust. Let me run your life, because I know what is best for you. Thanks for coming out tonight.